This week I have come to realise that I need to be more conscious of broadening my approach to text on this module. I think initially when I considered Uncle Tom's Children, I had such an emotional response because I received a very literal and surface readings of violence towards Black Americans. I think because it's so rich in social and historical context as a piece of protest literature, I started to act as a sort of sociologist, and I admittedly was caught in the fog of representation. In reflection, I think I felt emotional because I thought, it must have been awful to be black in the South under Jim Crow. I realise now how detrimental it can be for the actual purpose and function of literature if one reads it with these sweeping generalisations. This became starkly apparent when reading Wright's own response to Uncle Tom's Children, that his next text would be so hard and deep that they would have to face it without the consolation of tears. I reconsidered my reading to not assume Wright was trying to present this violence and the injustices issued by white Americans, but as his initial essay states, it is a question of ethics and humanity. It has become apparent that the African American experience is not a singular thing. Although there is a sense of communal past, each individual approaches survival and existence differently. I was listening to a podcast earlier this week regarding how African Americans responded to Trump's presidency. The speaker mentions a split between those that engage and those that resist. Both sides are needed, and neither are more black than the other. I immediately thought about Uncle Tom's Children, and more specifically Fire and Cloud. Robin Taylor is surrounded with institutions and groups that negotiate the future and life of African Americans differently. It presents the political institutions such as Red's Communist Party, who are active in resistance. And then there's the government and state institution embodied in the mayor who push the idea of engagement. And then there's the religious institution with the church and the deacons. My first thought was just how complex the idea of survival is. I felt like hiding and engaging with the doctrine of life under Jim Crow appears to be just as detrimental as either actively or indirectly resisting. I feel like it's almost a lose-lose situation. Yet in this particular story, I felt like they sort of found hope in solidarity and this idea of conviction through crisis of faith. I think it's interesting how Wright uses third-person narrative throughout the stories. In a sense, I felt like I was neither engaging nor resisting. As a reader, I was merely spectating. This made me think about the idea of spectating. Big Boy watches Bobo being attacked by a mob. Sarah watches Silas being burned in their house, and in Bright and Morning Star, Anne Sue is so absorbed in watching that she felt it was she who was being lifted and made ready for torture. It made me wonder as to why Wright chose to make us watch from a distance. I think maybe the use of third person, perhaps it doesn't impose a racialized narration, or perhaps we as the reader are given an opportunity, or rather a responsibility, to react a certain way. In week 1, I had said I was quite interested in why Toni Morrison chose to use the artist Jimi Hendrix, and in Langston Hughes, The Blues I'm Playing, it was interesting to consider the implications of music on racial identity and music as a signifier. I feel the negotiation of music is just as prominent in Uncle Tom's Children, and it's something that I would like to explore further. For instance, in Big Boy Leaves Home, I find comparing the boys singing This Train Bound for Glory and the white people singing We'll Hang Every Nigger to a Sour Tree. I think it's interesting how the train illuminates movement, singing about going north and progression, whereas the whites sing about physical constraint and initiating brutality. I feel where one song creates hope and optimism, the other embodies restriction and hate.